are from the book of Numbers. How lovely, how good are your tents and your shelters, O Israel. And they were first spoken about the Israelites when they were each in their own separate tents. But it was clear to the beholder that even separated, they were a community, a good one, a holy one. That is as true today as it was then. From this beautiful shelter of the Temple Israel Chapel in Memphis to each and every separate tent in which we dwell this morning, this moment of coming together is also tovu. It's also filled with goodness. So each from our own tent, our own dwelling, united in purpose. Page 110, Matovu.
Matovu, Matovu, Alecha Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael, Matovu, Matovu, Alecha Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael, V'ani berov chesdecha, avodetecha, eshtacha v'echokochecha, be'yiratecha. Matovu, Matovu, Alecha Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael, Matovu, Matovu, Alecha Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael, Mishkanotecha Yisrael.
Boker Tov, Good Yantif, Hoshana Tova to our Touro Synagogue family and everyone who is joining us this morning. Welcome here on what is, for us, a very beautiful, cool morning here in Memphis. And I hope that wherever you are, you can find beauty and sunshine in your space, if not outside, then inside. We were reminded this morning of something very special we wanted to share with you before this service begins. And I'll just read a few sentences out of the history of this historic Southern congregation, much like our own. Though the congregation actually numbered 36 families at the outset, the charter listed 10 men, a minyan, as the original incorporators. And early on, in the 1850s, the young congregation received a much-needed windfall, a $2,000 bequest from the estate of philanthropist Judah Touro of New Orleans. They used the money to buy their first building. So we stand here connected by an incredibly rich history and our Touro Synagogue Torah that we will read from in just a few minutes is sitting in this synagogue's original ark. So I hope that you can feel, Touro, wherever you are, this link that we are in a chain that is that's very connected this morning as we stand separately. In the absence of each other and this wonderful network of support in New Orleans that we have enjoyed, so many congregants who came together to be sure that we could get to one another on this high holiday, and the greater New Orleans community, event producers, WLAE TV, Temple Israel of Memphis has made this moment possible. And I would like to once again thank the incredible staff here, as well as our own Touro professional team for coming together so that this moment could happen. Thank you so much to the rabbinic team here who's been so supportive, led by Rabbi Micah Greenstein. Thank you so much to the president, Lori Meskin, executive director, Stacy Canales, director of facilities, Scott Giles, and his outstanding colleagues. Thank you so much to Ajay Cohen, who is here with us this morning, and to Message in a Bottle Productions for your support. Justin Croninger and Matt Gould, Derek Kiesler, all of you for giving us this gift. We're also honored again this morning to be joined by our accompanist, Jor Beitel, who is a visiting professor here at the Rudy Scheidt School of Music and a doctoral student at Juilliard, and a sibling in our Jewish family from Tel Aviv, Israel. A few details before we begin our service again today. There is the possibility for you to access the prayer book online. There should be an email in your inbox to our synagogue telling you how to do that. If you cannot access it, and we know that many of you can't, please don't worry. We will guide you through the service. You can take in the music and the language of the prayer book, perhaps in a new way because you're not looking at it. So please just be present and don't worry if you don't have the words in front of you. Also, please know that if someone is missing this service because it's too early and they happen to be outside of a time zone where this is a normal hour to have a service, or simply didn't get the word, it will be accessible after the fact and people can pray later with us. On behalf of our president, Gary Silbert, our board of trustees, our entire professional team, welcome to each and every one of you. We are so honored to pray with you and hope to greet you in person as soon as we can. Let us now prepare ourselves to pray. It's a good time to take a deep breath, to think about the blessings in our lives, even amidst a very difficult time for so many, those blessings. And we begin this morning with Psalm 150, which can be found on page 135. That chorus of hallelujah is repeated over and over again. Praise be to God for all the blessings in our lives. And this psalm urges us, each and every one of us, to remember that there are many ways to offer that praise. We can offer it with the instruments in our hands, with the voices in our bodies, with the clapping of hands. We can offer it outside. We can offer it inside a sanctuary. We can offer it inside our own home. And I'd like to share with you before we sing this psalm the words penned by one of the great moral and spiritual leaders of our time, Reverend Tracy Blackman, who wrote just at this time last year, upon hearing the news of the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Reverend Blackman wrote this as an introduction to our psalm. May our grief be infused with a call to action. May our tears water our resistance. May our mourning mobilize our nation. May our shock give way to uprising. Justice will prevail. So if we feel those feelings this morning or in the weeks past, any grief or tears or mourning or shock or exhaustion, let us use those to be our blessing this morning. We don't have to reject those feelings. We can own them and invite in all the blessings that come when we are at our purest and simplest. So page 135, we sing together, opening this morning's service with words of praise.
Care of good Lord.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
beteka shofar. Hallelujah, benever bechinor. Hallelujah, betovu macho. Hallelujah, beminim ve'ugav. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, v'tzitzalei shama. Hallelujah, v'tzitzalei truha. Kol haneshama tehalleluya. Kol haneshama tehalleluya. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
We rise now spiritually and physically, page 142 for our call to worship.
Barechu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed.
For the light of the sun and the light inside each of us, we give thanks. At the bottom of page 144, Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaMeorot, our praise to you, Adonai, creator of the cosmic lights. The Torah is our greatest gift, our token of God's love and guidance. At the bottom of page 148, we pray, Baruch atah Adonai habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Our praise to you, Adonai. You have singled out your people Israel with love through this gift of Torah. We turn now to page 150. United by these ancient words, Shema, we sing together.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto,
Please be seated. 152.
Ve'ata et Adonai Elohecha b'chol lebavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher Anochi metzarecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha u'mlechtecha b'derech u'shokrecha u'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
On page 163, a couple of reflections as we prepare for our Micha Mocha. Where does Israel get the courage, the chutzpah, to go on, believing in redemption in a world that knows mass hunger, political exile, and war? How can Jews testify to hope and human value when they have been continuously persecuted, hated, expelled, and destroyed out of the memories of the Exodus? And toward the bottom of the page, what we do with that memory as follows. Remember the stories of slavery, and you will never stop working for freedom. Remember their fear at the edge of the sea, and self-doubt will never defeat you. Remember when desperation turned to celebration, and you will never let go of hope. Remember the words of the Baal Shem Tov. Forgetfulness leads to exile. Remembrance is the secret of redemption. In remembrance now, page 164, the song they sang at the shores of the sea.
Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nor ha'tehilot osef ele, nor ha'tehilot osef ele. Shirach gadasha shibachu geolim l'shimcha al safat hayam yachad kulam odov v'him lichu v'hamru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Tzur Yisrael Koma be'ezrat Yisrael Ufdeichnu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael Aleinu Adonai tzvahot shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Gaha Yisrael.
There are many extra words, and there are some distinctly different melodies, but the core of our prayer this day remains the same. Especially now on page 166 for the Amidah, the Tefillah, the standing prayer. We are reminded in the words of Rabbi Morris Adler that prayer is a step on which we rise from the self we are to the self we wish to be. Prayer affirms the hope that no reality can crush, the aspiration that can never acknowledge defeat. We rise as able on page 166 for the Amidah.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor VaHanora העליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוהים חיים. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אמן. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטוב. מקלקל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, צומח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לישני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממיתו מחיה ומטמיע ישועה. מי כמוך אל הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל.
You can be seated. Page 174. Through the ages, Unatana Tokef has become the central prayer poem of the High Holidays, theologically and perhaps even emotionally. It represents a fear that we carry around all year, but which becomes acutely keen around this time, that endings are something that we're uncomfortable with, something that we all hold, but unlike other endings, this one is not about the end of time or some sort of eternal reckoning, not in a deadly way, that is. Rather, it's a spiritual reset, a reminder to account for the year and to allow ourselves the space to grow as the new one begins. Unatana Tokef is on page 174.
Unatane Tokef kedushat hayom, ki hu nora hayom, uvotina semalchutecha, ve'yikon v'chesed kisecha, v'teshev alav emet. Emet, 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 emet ki ata hu dayan, dayan u'mochiach, ויותר פועד, ויותר פועד, וכותב, וחותם, וסופר ומונה, ותזכור כל הנשכחות, ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות, ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות ומאליו יקרא וכותב יד כל האדם בו. 176. ובשופר גדול ייתקע וכל דממה דקה יישמע.
And so a great shofar will cry Tekiah, a still small voice will be heard. Angels in a whirl of fear and trembling will say, behold the day of judgment, for they too are judged. In your eyes, even they are not blameless. On Rosh Hashanah, it is written, in the fast of Yom Kippur, it is sealed. Page 178.
Rosh Hashanah ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. כמה יעבורון וכמה יברחון, מי יחיה ומי ימות, מי וקיצו ומי לא וקיצו. בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. מי באש ומי במים, מי בחרב ומי בחיה, מי ברעב ומי בצמא, מי ברעש ומי במגפה. בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. מי בחניקה ומי בסגילה, מי ינוח ומי ינוח, מי ישקיט ומי יטורף, מי ישלב ומי יתייסר. בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. מי יניח ומי ישיר, מי יושפע ומי ירום. בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון.
On Rosh Hashanah, we plunge like swimmers into a sea of words. On Yom Kippur, the sea rises, then crests, and we emerge sealed by the wax, warmed by the fire of braided candle. The new year is like a trailhead opening wide before us, the day of fasting, narrow, breathless, so quick to close. We contemplate a new year, and this we know. Some of us will live, and some of us will die. Some of us will feel at ease, some will be restless. Some will have peace of mind, some will have strife. Some will be tranquil, some will be tormented. Some will be raised high, some will be brought low. Some will have riches, some will be impoverished. God of holiness, God of hope, let us glimpse your truth as we attach our hope to yours.
Ut teshuva, ut tefila, ut tzedakah, ma'avir hin et roh hagezerah.
But when we return to a path that we know is righteous, through prayer, through tzedakah, through love, we know that we can transcend any harshness that life may bring. Page 184, please rise.
Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, kishem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marom, kakatov yad neviyecha, v'kara zel ve'amar, kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Melech haaretz kevodo. Adir, adirenu Adonai, Adonenu madir shimcha b'kol haaretz. Baruch kevod Adonai mimkomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, hu Avinu hu Malkeinu, hu Moshienu vehu Yashmienu, ve'rakamav le'nei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohayich Tzivon, ledov ador, Hallelujah. Ledov Adonai gid godlecha, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה.
Please be seated. Page 192.
Baruch atah Adonai HaMelech HaKadosh.
Blessed are you, Adonai, holy sovereign.
Page 196. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, ya'aleh v'yavo v'yagia v'yare'a v'yeratzeh, v'yishama v'yipaked v'yizacher zichronenu ufikdonenu. V'zichron avotenu v'imotenu, v'zichron Yerushalayim ir kodshecha, v'zichron kol amcha beit Yisrael lefanecha, lifleta letova, l'chein u'l'chesed u'l'rachamim, l'chaim u'l'shalom, b'yom hazikaron hazeh. Our God and God of the generations before us, may a memory of us ascend and come before you. May it be heard and seen by you, winning your favor and reaching your awareness. Together with the memory of our ancestors, the memory of your sacred city, Jerusalem, and the memory of your people, the family of Israel, may we be remembered for safety, well-being, and favor, for love and compassion, for life and for peace on this day of remembrance. Zochrenu Adonai Eloheinu bo l'tovah, ufokdeinu vo livracha,
Amen.
v'hoshienu vo l'chaim.
Amen.
Eternal our God, remember us.
Amen.
Be mindful of us.
Amen.
And redeem us for a life of goodness and blessing.
Amen.
Page 208.
The bottom of the page,
Baruch atah Adonai, melech haaretz, mekadesh Yisrael, melech haaretz, mekadesh Yisrael, melech haaretz, mekadesh Yisrael, v'yom hazikaron. Amen.
We continue for a few moments with silent prayer.
Let there be peace. Grant goodness, blessing, blessing and grace, grace and constancy, constancy and compassion to all your people. Page 216, Sim Shalom.
Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom, Tova Uveracha, Chen v'chesed v'rakamim Aleinu, Ve'hako Yisrael Amecha, Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom. Barecheinu Avinu, Kulanu kechad be'or panecha, Ki v'or panecha, Natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu, Torat Chaim ve'avat chesed, u'tzedaka u'veraka, ve'rakamim ve'chaim ve'shalom, Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom, Tova uveracha, V'tov beinecha, levarech et amcha Yisrael, ve'et kol ha'amim, b'kol het u'b'kol shah, b'shlomecha. Chen v'chesed v'rakamim Aleinu, Ve'hako Yisrael Amecha, Sim Shalom, Shalom, Sim Shalom, Baruch atah Adonai, Oseh HaShalom. Amen, Amen, Amen.
It is time now for our Torah service. When Cantor Margolius left New Orleans over the weekend, after having served so many congregants who remained in New Orleans and making sure that our building was safe and empty of food in the fridge, no small task in and of itself, he brought with him our Torah scroll, our newest that we dedicated only 2 years ago at Simchat Torah. Knowing how many of your hands inscribed the letters within this scroll, knowing that the wood of the Eitzim is from a New Orleans tree, knowing that we all dedicated it together on Simchat Torah on our bima, it feels very special to the three of us to be reading from it on this day. It is a tangible connection between all of us, as much as it connects us in other intangible ways as well. As ever, this Torah stands as a powerful symbol of who we are and where we've been and where we're going. And like our connection itself, like our community itself, this scroll is portable, and it will travel with us wherever we go, wherever we are. We read on page 226 these poignant words, so resonant perhaps at this moment of separation. We are the people of the book. Through fire and mud and dust, we have borne our scrolls tenderly as a baby swaddled in a blanket, traveling with our words sewn into our clothes and carried on our backs. Let us take up the scroll of Torah and dance with it when we can, and touch it and read it out. For the mind touches the word and makes it light. So does light enter us, and then we shine. Our liturgy for taking the Torah from the ark, found on page 227 and following. Please rise physically and spiritually as the Torah is brought out.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, v'ein k'ma'asecha, malchutecha malchut kol amim, u'memshaltecha b'kol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch, le'olam v'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. 228. Adonai, Adonai, el rachum v'chanun, herech apayim v'rav chesed v'emet, notzer chesed la'alafim, noseh avon v'fesha v'chata v'nakeh. Adonai, Adonai, el rachum v'chanun, herech apayim v'rav chesed v'emet, notzer chesed la'alafim, noseh avon v'fesha v'chata v'nakeh. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Benora Shemo, Gadol Adonai Iti, Onerom ma shemo yachdav.
Adonai hagedula v'hagevora v'hatiferet v'hanetzach v'hahod. Iho b'shamayim u'va'aretz, Iho b'shamayim u'va'aretz. Adonai הממלכה ומתנשא לכל ראש.
As is tradition, we are about to read the story of the binding of Isaac, the Akedah, one of the most memorable passages in our Torah. It contains much complexity, and the moral challenges that are drawn from it are often not clear, not always a clear message that we need in times of greatest trial. The story contains deep, confusing, resonant lessons about faith and trust and questioning. And most importantly for today, it is the source of our tradition for blowing the shofar, one of them. In the story, as you recall, a ram's horn gets caught in a thicket, and that is what prevents the sacrifice of Isaac from actually taking place. Like this passage of the Torah itself, perhaps the lessons of our current moment, wherever we are and whatever we happen to be going through, are too complex for us to immediately understand in this moment. But the blast of the shofar is not. It says it all. When we hear the shofar, when we blow it, we speak with one unified voice, and the shofar will be our collective wordless prayer. And it is that gift, that complex words of Torah result in a unifying and heartfelt wordless prayer that Judaism gives to us at this time of year and always. So we will read these ancient words and allow them and their questions to penetrate our minds, and our response will be with the shofar, that we continue with resolve into this new year despite the confounding questions that we encounter. If you would like to follow along with the reading, you are welcome to do that on pages 200 and page 240 in the Siddur. And we are reading from Genesis 22, if you happen to have a Chumash, if you happen to have a Tanakh nearby. And the blessing that we'll say is on page 230. It is a great joy this morning to invite for our Aliyah someone who has helped us so very much in creating this prayer experience, Dror Beitel. And we've asked him to have the Aliyah, and I know that our entire congregation wants to extend him so much gratitude for being ready in this pinch to make music and prayer with us. So thank you so much, Dror. I'd like to call you to the Torah now. Ya'amod Dror ben Shmuel v'Sara lichvod haTorah.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai Amvarach Leolam Va'ed.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Amen. Vayehi achar devarim ha'ele v'ha'elohim nisa et Avraham vayomer elav Avraham vayomer hineni ויאמר קח נא את בנך את יחידך אשר אהבת את יצחק ולך לך ארץ המוריה והלהו שם לעולה על אחד הערים אשר אומר אליך. God tested Abraham and called out Abraham, and Abraham answered, Hineni, here I am. And Abraham was instructed, take your son, your precious one whom you love, and offer him on a place that I will show you as a sacrifice to me. וישכם אברהם בבוקר ויחבוש את חמורו ויקח את שני נעריו איתו ואת יצחק בנו ויבקע עולה ויקום וילך אל המקום אשר אמר לו האלוהים. ביום השלישי ויישא אברהם את עיניו וירא את המקום מרחוק. ויאמר אברהם אל נעריו שבו לכם פה עם החמור ואני והנער נלכה עד כה ונשתחווה ונשובה עליכם. Abraham obeyed and took Isaac his son and the etzim, the wood for the offering, and traveled to the place where God instructed him. ויקח אברהם את עצי העולה, וישם יצחק בנו, ויקח בידו את האש ואת המאכלת, וילכו שניהם יחדיו. And the two of them, Isaac and Abraham, walked on together. ויאמר יצחק אל אברהם אבי, ויאמר אבי, ויאמר הנני בני, ויאמר הנה האש והעצים ואיה עשה לעולה. Isaac asked his father, I see all of the materials for the sacrifice, but where is the sacrifice? ויאמר אברהם אלוהים יראה לו עשה לעולה בני. וילכו שניהם יחדיו, and Abraham answered, God will provide the sacrifice, my son. And the two walked on together. ויבוא אל המקום אשר אמר לו האלוהים, ויבן שם אברהם את המזבח, ויערוך את העצים, ויעקוד את יצחק בנו, וישם אותו על המזבח ממעל העצים. And Abraham bound Isaac and placed him on top of the wood. וישלח אברהם את ידו ויקח את המאכלת לשחוט את בנו. And Abraham stretched out his hand and he took up the knife, preparing to sacrifice his son. ויקרא אליו מלאך אדוני מן השמיים ויאמר אברהם אברהם ויאמר הנני. And at that moment an angel of God called out from the heavens, Abraham, Abraham, and Abraham answered, הנני. ויאמר אל תשלח ידך אל הנער ואל תעש לו מאומה כי אתה ידעתי כי ירא אלוהים אתה ולא חסכת את בנך את יחידך ממני. Abraham, do not stretch out your hand against the boy. Do not do anything to him. I know that you fear God and that you did not withhold your son from me. וישא אברהם את עיניו וירא והנה הילך נחז בסבך בקרניו וילך אברהם ויקח את העיר ויעלהו לעולה תחת בנו. Abraham lifted his eyes and he saw a ram with its horn caught in a thicket. And he took the ram and he offered it as a sacrifice in place of his son. ויקרא אברהם שם המקום ההוא אדוני יראה אשר יאמר היום בהר אדוני יראה. ויקרא מלאך אדוני אל אברהם שנית מן השמיים. The angel of God called out to Abraham a second time from the heavens. ויאמר בי נשבעתי נאום אדוני כי יען אשר עשית את הדבר הזה ולא חסכת את בנך את יחידך כי ברך אברכך והרבה הרבה צרך ככוכבי השמיים וככל אשר על שפת הים וירש שרך את שאר אויביה ויתברכו בזרעך כל גויי הארץ עקב אשר שמעת בקולי. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, the angel said, and as numerous as the sands on the sea, because you heard my call. Vayashov Avraham el Ne'arav, Vayakumu, Vayachu Yachdav el Be'eshava, Vayeshev Avraham B'Eshava. And Abraham returned to his traveling companions, and they went to Beersheba, and there they stayed.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נתן בתוכנו ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה
Amen. Dor Mishaberach Avotenu ve'imotenu. May the one who blessed our ancestors bless you in your time here in Memphis, here in your new home. Bless your family and all the places they are. May you have a happy and healthy new year. And thank you so much for making this prayer experience with us. Shana Tova.
Page 244, with our Torah out in our midst, a prayer for healing. We say, Mishaberach Avotenu v'imotenu Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, Hu Yevarech v'Yirapeh et hacholim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yemaleh Rachamim Aleihem, L'hachalimam u'l'rapotam, L'hachazikam u'l'hachayotam, V'yishlach lahem mehera refuah shlema, B'toch sha'ar hacholim, refuat hanefesh u'refuat haguf, hashta ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'nomar. Amen.
Amen.
May the one who brought blessings to our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bring the blessing of health to those who are ill. May the Holy One, blessed source of life and healing, sustain and strengthen them with compassion and restore them to full health without delay. For all who struggle against illness, let renewal of spirit and renewal of body come soon. And together we say,
Amen.
Amen.
The Torah will now be lifted and placed before all of our eyes, page 246. As able, please rise spiritually, physically, in honor of the Torah.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל פי אדוני ביד משה. וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה.
Our Haftarah this morning, our prophetic reading, is from the book of Samuel. It tells the story of Hannah. Hannah, who, distraught, went to the temple to pray. And she did so in a way that the priest couldn't recognize. She did so through tears. She prayed. She felt these words in her heart, and her lips were moving, but as she trembled, no sound came out of her mouth. The priest was confused as to why she was in the temple, didn't recognize what she was doing as prayer. And yet, God heard her prayers. This Haftarah on Rosh Hashanah is a reminder that in all the ways and places we pray, all of them reach up higher and higher. The blessing before Haftarah can be found on page 247, and then the Haftarah on page 250, beginning with verse 9.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hanemarim be'emet Baruch atah Adonai, habocher batorav Moshe avdo, uVyisrael amo v'nviei hamet v'tzedek. ותקום חנה אחרי אוכלה ושילה ואחרי שעתו, ואלי הכהן יושב על הכיסא על מזוזת היכל אדוני, והיא מרת נפש, ותתפלל על אדוני ובכה תבכה. ותידון נדר ותאמר, אדוני צבאות, אמראות יראל, ואני אמתך, וזכרתני ולא תשכח את אמתך, ונתת לאמתך זרע אנשים, ונתתיו לאדוני כל ימי חייו, ומורא לא יעלה על ראשו. והיה כי הרבתה להתפלל לפני אדוני, ואלי שומר את פיה, וחנה היא מדברת על ליבה, רק שפתיה נאות, וקולה לא יישמע, ויחשבה אלי לשיכורה. ויאמר אליה אלי, עד מתי תשתכרין? הסירי את עינך מעלייך. ותען חנה ותאמר לו, אדוני, אישה קשת רוח אנוכי, ואדוני ויין ושיכר לא שתיתי, ואשפוך את נפשי לפני אדוני. 259. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol ha'olamim tzadik b'chol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh ha'medaber mekayim shekol devarav emet v'tzedek al ha'torah ve'al avodah ve'al ha'nevi'im ve'al yom hazikaron hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu lechavod u'tifaret. Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umvarchim otach yitbarach shimcha befi kol chai tamid leolam va'ed udvarcha emet v'kayam la'ad baruch atah Adonai melech al kol haaretz mekadesh Yisrael melech al kol haaretz Mekadesh Yisrael, Melech al kol haaretz, Mekadesh Yisrael, ve'yom hazikaron. Amen.
Asher Koach. We now turn to page 277 as we return the Torah to the Ark. Please rise.
Etz chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tomcheha meushar deracheha darchei noam v'kol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva kadesh yameinu kekedem.
You can, of course, be seated. Shana Tova. Folks, have I got next year's sermon ready for you? Maybe you won't have to wait that long, but it became pretty self-evident about a week and a half ago that my Rosh Hashanah sermon, all about spontaneity being the root of joy amidst the boring, bland routine of daily life, just would not be the right thing to offer this year. It's not that I don't believe in it, or that I no longer think it's an inherently Jewish message, or that I don't want to tell you about it, just not right now, you know? It all started, as you can imagine, a week ago this past Friday when I woke up with a list of things to check off on my to-do list before Shabbat, and for some reason that would have to wait for investigation until I had brewed some coffee, a dozen or so text messages that had arrived ridiculously early in the morning. After pouring a cup, I saw that the very first one happened to be from an old camp friend, my buddy Adam. He's the music guy in my life. He's the one that I go to discover new music or to learn about old music that I had never really encountered before. And a few years ago, he and I got into this habit of replacing the text part of our text messages just with links to sometimes a video clip, but usually a music file. A game, I guess you could call it, where we would ask each other, tell each other, or comment to each other about something, but without explicitly stating what it was. Maybe a little geeky, but it's fun and everyone should try it. Anyway, as usual, Adam's text wasn't something that needed to be read, but rather listened to. So I clicked away, and there it was. The unmistakable opening riff and the classic rock lyrics that I happen to know by heart. Bow, bow, ba-dow, bow, 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 bow. I see a bad moon arising. I see trouble on the way. I see hurricanes and lightning. I see bad times today. Mind you, I was still on my first cup of coffee of the day, and I hadn't checked a single other message or any news sites or anything else. But I instinctively wondered if maybe the storm that I had heard a few things about over the last couple days might have become something more. And of course, within a few hours, we all knew that things were about to get intense weather-wise. To be perfectly honest, at first I had every intention of staying in New Orleans, regardless of what seemed to be coming our way. But it was at some point during our clergy's morning Zoom call that I thought maybe I should just send a message to some friends in Atlanta asking if I could come stay with them should things get really bad. Just come now, they said. It's almost like they knew. But it took me a little bit longer to come around on that decision. Like a lot of folks, I listened carefully to those official updates that came in every couple of hours. At 1 o'clock, I decided to fill up my car's gas tank and stop by the market, just in case. At 3 o'clock, I decided to go and get that back tire looked at, the one that I suspected was a little low on air. And it's a good thing I did because, hey, guess what, sir? You've got a nail stuck in there, but we patched it up. At 5 o'clock, I decided to make a decision at 7 o'clock. And at 7 o'clock is when I decided to pack up and get on the road. The problem, though, is that when you start packing that late, you finish even later. And that means you really do need to get some sleep before you can responsibly even think about driving for 7 or 8 hours. And that means that when you wake up the next morning and finally get the bags and the dog's bags and yourself in the car and on the road, you're surrounded by a whole lot of other cars. And now your 8-hour drive is more like 13 hours. But it didn't matter, because I knew what I was driving away from, because I knew that Adam's text was right. At this point, we could all see a bad moon horizon. For the first couple of hours in the car, I oscillated between listening to news and weather updates and making quick check-in calls with friends and colleagues. But at some point, I just needed some silence. So I turned it all off, and I let the hum of the engine and the whistling white noise of the AC take its place. But rather than relax me, that quiet instead provided a pretty comfy echo chamber for my worries and my fears to amplify exponentially. a deafening kind of silence, the kind in which your mind concocts a whole dialogue all on its own. I shouldn't have left. It always ends up being nothing. No, you did the right thing, even if it is a bust as usual. My building is elevated. I'm sure it'll all be okay. But why didn't you spend a little longer securing everything? Why didn't you bring X, Y, and Z with you? The levees will hold. The pumps will work. Maybe don't be so naive. I think those moments when your brain plays out both sides of the situation are helpful and healthy. And I've always loved exactly what we found in this week's Torah portion, a particular moment that is ripe for an interpretation in just such a way. The portion that Rabbi Bowman just read and chanted so beautifully from Genesis chapter 22, the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. It is, as she mentioned, one of the hardest moments of Torah, the entire Torah, to wrap your head around, to try and understand. As she said, here's what it says. And so it was that God put Abraham to a test. And God said to him, Abraham, and he said, Hineni, here I am. And God said, come, take your son, your only one, whom you love, Isaac, and go forth to the land of Moriah to offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I will show you. I can imagine the silence that filled that space, the deafening silence within Abraham's own head. And I have to wonder who could ever hear those words directly from God and not react? Who could simply listen? Maybe like when evacuating, it only plays out in your own head. And so here's how I imagine that. God said to him, Abraham, and he said, Hineni, here I am. And God said, come. Well, where? Take your son. Which one? Your only son. I have two. The one you love. Well, I love both of them. Isaac. Oh, that one. And go forth to the land of Moriah. Why? To offer him there. What do you mean, offer him? As a burnt offering. On one of the mountains that I will show you. What? My week has been filled with moments like that, wondering how I would speak to God about this experience, this evacuation, the fear that grips us when we hear of it, if it was at all possible. Maybe like Adam, we wouldn't speak, just text. Maybe it wouldn't be words, but just songs. And I had plenty of time in the car to text God back and forth with some songs. So I forwarded God that Creedence Clearwater Revival link from Adam, Bad Moon Rising, and God took a few moments, the 3 dots of texting back appeared, and in return I got some Bob Dylan, reminding me of the blessing of friends and loved ones who could give me some shelter from the storm. I sent God a link to lyrics from New Orleans local singer and superstar Lil Wayne, the song Tie My Hands about the traumas and the memories still present to this day from August 29th, 2005. God replied with a link to George Harrison and reminded me that with the support of community all around us, that all things must pass. I thought and clicked and refreshed and texted when I could for the next few days and watched the storm unfold. And there I was, really missing home, really worried about my friends and loved ones still in the city. So I sent God that song by Tom Waits, I Wish I Was in New Orleans. God just sent me a heart emoji and a thumbs up. Then our team started talking, Rabbi Bowman, Cantor Margolius, Carrie Toppy, and myself. Plans started forming. We could finally breathe knowing that this was not, as Mayor Cantrell said, a repeat of Katrina, that all things being equal, we were okay. Among the Turo team, conversations were had and moves were made to gather here in this beautiful space at Temple Israel. And so I pulled out of Atlanta on Shabbat morning and I sent God some Willie Nelson. On the road again. God texted back with a smile. and sent me Tom Hall's How I Got to Memphis. Like I said, is this nerdy? Is this geeky? Yes, but it's fun and everyone should try it. But more than that, I'll say this. Each and every one of these songs, like each and every one of our prayers set to perhaps a different melody, each one of these songs had already found their way into my heart in some specific way before, and yet never quite like this. This time, those familiar words landed in a wholly new way. And like that not too all uncommon experience, so too do we hear these blessings and sacred texts in a specifically different way for Rosh Hashanah and a wholly new way for this year of 5782. Because we are wholly different and holy in 5782. If not by thriving, then at least for right now, by surviving. And that's okay, because that's all that it takes to live in this world sometimes. Like the philosopher Heraclitus said, no one ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and they are not the same person. And so may that be our guide for this Rosh Hashanah, filled with hearing, speaking, blessings, thinking with fresh ears and fresh lips, and with fresh hearts and fresh minds, with people and places to give us refuge, with traditions that keep us grounded. And may we all listen to some good music along the way. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova. Page 223. This is perhaps the song that the entire Jewish world sends to God on the high holidays. Even just the melody grounds us in this time. So we turn now to the ark and speak these words from generations past and sing them and mean them. Avinu Malkeinu Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice. Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned against you. Avinu Malkeinu Chamol Aleinu Va'al Olalenu V'tapenu. Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our families. Avinu Malkeinu Kale Dever V'cherev V'ra'av Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger. Avinu Malkeinu Kale Kol Tsar Umastin Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror. Avinu Malkeinu Kotvenu B'Sefer Chayim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, enter our name in the book of lives well lived. Avinu Malkeinu Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, renew for us a year of goodness. And finally, Avinu Malkeinu Chonenu Va'anenu Ki Ein Banu Ma'asim. Asei Manu Tzedakah V'Chesed V'Hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu. Ve'olol Aleinu, Ve'tapenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Kale Dever, Ve'cherev V'rav, Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Kale Kol Tsar Umastin Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Kotvenu, Besefer Chaim Tovim, Avinu Malkeinu, Chodesh Aleinu, Chodesh Aleinu, Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chodesh Aleinu, Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu, Shema Kolenu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vanenu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vanenu, Ki Ein Banu Masim, Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed, Aseh Imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vanenu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vanenu, Ki Ein Banu Masim.
We turn to page 286 for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gedula le'otzeh breshit, shelo asanu kigoyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpechot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kecho hamonam, v'anachnu korhim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, Lifnei Melech Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu V'nemar v'haya Adonai L'melech al kol haaretz Bayom hahu Yeh Adonai echad U'shemo U'shemo echad.
You may be seated. We devote this moment to those who have departed this earth, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, those whom we are missing at this moment. And before we hear the blast of the shofar, we will draw them close and resolve to bring them with us into the new year. If some messenger were to come to us with the offer that death should be overthrown, but with the one inseparable condition that birth also should cease. If the existing generation were given a chance to live forever, but on the clear understanding that never again would there be a child or a youth or a first love, never again new persons with new hopes, new ideas, new achievements, ourselves and always and never any others, Could the answer be in doubt? When we fear death's decree, let us bring this solace: the memory of loved ones who have gone before us, a vision of generations to come, through whom we reach far into the future, far beyond our own lives. Let us treasure the time we have and resolve to use it well, counting each moment precious, a chance to apprehend some truth, to experience some beauty, to conquer some evil, to ease some suffering, to love and to be loved, to achieve something of lasting worth. There is promise within each day and within each of us that only we can fulfill. Let our lives be lived so that someday it will be true to say of each of us, the world is a little better because for just one moment they lived in it. In our congregational family, we send our love and sympathy to the loved ones of Rini Idelson, for whom we're in a period of Shiva. And we send our love and sympathy to the families of Brian Russell Friedman, Max Nathan Jr., and Jenny Lou Cox, all of whom died within the last month. The following loved ones have yahrzeit on this Rosh Hashanah day. We recall and thank God for the blessings of Henry Berlin, Minnie Sarnoff Fireman, Nat Friedler, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Benjamin Goldenberg, Saul Grishman, Ophelia P. Hausman, Isidore Heyman, Abner Jaffe, Marlene Jaffe, Henry Lazarus, Lillian Edith Levine, Harcourt M. Levy, Max H. Levy, Emmanuel S. Pulitzer, Jerome Schwamm, Henry Schwartz, Sam Schwartz, Lester Benjamin Shapiro, Reuben Weaker, and Roberta C. Usby. Take this moment now to recall the name of your loved one, whose name perhaps I didn't read. And of course, there are so many that we hold in our hearts each and every time we say Kaddish. It is not their yahrzeit, but we recall them just the same. And as a community, we rise wherever we are to support those who are in mourning and for all those for whom there is no one else but us to say Kaddish. On page 292, we say together, Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha barichu le'ela ule'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. May the source of peace bestow peace on all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort for all who are bereaved. And we say together, amen.
Amen.
If you are able to remain standing physically and spiritually, please do so as we turn now to our shofar service. This is the quintessential sound of the high holidays, the most significant moment of Rosh Hashanah. It is our cry to God, to please be with us, help us live into our gifts in the year to come. And it is a wake-up call to ourselves to remind us that there is so much good inside us, so much we have to offer the world. After the sound of this shofar, we are granted these 10 days between now and Yom Kippur, as much as we can, to think about who we want to be, how we want to perform those acts of tikkun with people that we loved whom we have hurt, or people that we don't even like, but we did not mean to hurt, those two. And there are people for whom we cannot ask forgiveness. And so in that case, we turn to God. We pray to come out of these 10 days more whole and more resolved to be a blessing in the world and to one another than we went into them. On page 136, as we prepare for the shofar's call, we read, "Blessed are we, blessed is our gathering in all the ways that it is. As we open our hearts to the voice of the shofar, happy are we to hear its call of return, the sacred trumpet of teshuvah. Blessed are we, held close by an ancient sound that echoes, l'dor vador, from generation to generation. And happy are we, rising to the joyful cry of the new year. Blessed are we who hear in these blasts the sound of the voice of community. Happy are we who know its embrace, its season of celebration, its quest for connection and purpose. Holy is this gift of community. Blessed the act of belonging." The blessing for the reading of shofar, for the sounding of the shofar, is found on page 206. Cantor will make them now as he prepares to share these blasts with us.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu, v'higianu lazman hazeh. Amen.
Tekiah, Shvarim Teruah, Tekiah, Tekiah, Shvarim, Tekiah, Tekiah, Teruah, Tekiah Gedolah,
We continue with the Reshet Sifatenu. Reshet Sifatenu yerav lefanecha el ram benisa. Reshet Sifatenu yerav lefanecha el ram benisa. Mevinu mazin mavidu makshiv lekol tikiyatenu. Od kapel brachamim brachamim uvrahatzon zeites shofrotenu.
You may be seated. Cantor, you may even be seated. Welcome again, each of you who has found us this morning, whether you're a part of our Torah Synagogue family or our more extended human family. So glad to pray with you. And I hope that if you are able to be in New Orleans to come visit our beautiful building and our even more beautiful people. There are some people that I would love to thank this morning who have made these high holiday services possible. Your gifts were so heartfelt. Both the new cameras and technology that are in Toro that will allow us to get to you, our congregation, in clearer and brighter form for years to come, and the production that we will be able to offer, hopefully on Yom Kippur. Thank you so much to Naomi and Stanley Yavne Close, the gift given in loving memory of Raphael and Kuni Yavne, Cantor Zalman and Anna Yavne, and Cantor Emmanuel Matt Yavne, Cantor Murray Bernard Yavne, and Cyrus Israel Yavne. And thank you so much to the Cantor family, the David and Patsy Cantor Worship Fund. Thank you also to Meredith and Mark Cunningham for sponsoring this live stream on Rosh Hashanah, given in memory of Mr. Peter Pierce. I hope that many of you will be able to join us tomorrow, families and children, or people who like to be near families and children, for our Rosh Hashanah service on Wednesday. So that's tomorrow at 10 a.m. It will be over Zoom. A link can be found in your congregational emails. Please reach out to Maya Shar, Associate Director of Education and Youth Engagement, for any assistance you may need, maya@torosynagogue.com. This coming Friday, only a few days away, September 10th, we welcome special guest sermon giver, Reverend Gregory T. Manning, for Shabbat Shuvah. Reverend Manning is the founder of the Greater New Orleans Interfaith Climate Coalition, which exists to establish working objectives to green faith communities, address environmental injustice, and preserve the environment. As I shared last night, we don't know all of the different modes we'll be able to offer this service. We hope very much to be able to offer it in person in Toro, but regardless, it will be streamed live on torosynagogue.com and on our Facebook page. We so look forward to when we can be together again. If you need any assistance or support, please do fill out the link of the survey that we have sent out a few times, or to reach out directly via email or phone call. Our staff and clergy are monitoring those as best we can, and we will reach back to you as soon as we can. Thank you once again to the team here at Temple Israel for giving us this gift to be together this morning, and Yasher Koach to my colleagues, Rabbi Todd Silverman and Cantor Kevin Margolius, for beautiful leading this morning. And thank you again so much to Dror for the beautiful music. We conclude this service on page 294 with these words of prayer for this Rosh Hashanah day. We pray the following: strengthen us on this day. Bless us on this day. Lift up our lives on this day. Grant us goodness. Inscribe us for a good life. Hear our heartfelt words. And on this day, receive our prayers with love. Fortify, God, our best intentions, our best impulses, the best that is in us. May we go forth today to do your righteous work. We sing together.
Hayom Tamseinu Amen. צדקך.
Amen. 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 Hayom te'amsenu. Amen. 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 Hayom te'amsenu. Amen. Adonai, I have offered you thanks and blessing in 1,000 ways, but never quite like I do today. Our God and God of our ancestors, eternal God of all generations, may your presence in our lives this new year renew us and our spirits and our strength. May it be a good year and a sweet year. Shana Tova Tikatevu. May we be inscribed and sealed for a good year. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.